Right, hey everybody. Today we are going to actually go look into doing some refinancing options on a 30-year loan. Many of you may have heard that the federal interest rates are very low right now, looking like they're going to stay low for quite a while. And this might sound like a good opportunity for you to go and refinance your home if you own one. We're going to look at some numbers to actually see if that is a good idea and then maybe some techniques on how to save you some money. Spoiler alert, if you just go do a traditional refinance and stretch out your existing loan back out for another 30 years, you actually set yourself up to lose a whole lot of money. But we'll dig into that, look at some numbers, and see how we can best take advantage of that situation if you do decide to refinance. As before, I'm not a accountant. I'm not a mortgage broker. I'm just some guy that's running the numbers. So take it all with a grain of salt. Also, we are looking at some generalities with this today. When you refinance, typically there are additional fees that are tacked on with your refinancing. That may be closing costs again, and even if you don't have to pay closing costs, you do generally have to cover the cost of an assessor coming in, and it's pretty much like buying a house all over again, where you got to go through all the steps that you'd have to get your initial mortgage. So um, we're not going to factor that into our pricing today, but remember that even if you're not paying closing costs, by the time you get everything done, you might be tacking on an extra $4,000 or $5,000. It's going to depend really on where you're at, how much that's going to be. So be careful what you're doing with this. We're just doing a quick and dirty here today to see where our numbers um, could possibly sit and give us a general idea kind of where we're going with things. But let's go ahead and jump into our Excel sheets and see what we can do with this. All right, so we are back into our Excel sheets that we built a few days ago. Mine might look a little bit different. It's just because I stacked my loan up onto the corner and built the sheet down below it. I think on the one that we built together, we built them side by side. Everything's still the same. Nothing changed on that. That just will be why mine looks a little bit different. So on our initial loan, we're going to say we took out a loan for $300,000, a 30-year loan. Remember, our terms are in monthly, so 30 years divided by or times 12 is 360. Our interest rate is 4%. And then I've got a couple different scenarios that we can look at here, but I'll walk you through how to do one of them, and then I'll show you the results on the other ones, just so we're not sitting here wasting a whole lot of time while I'm moving numbers around for you. Let's go ahead and copy this. We're going to copy everything that we have here. So you do Control A again, Control C if you don't know those hotkeys, quick keys. We're going to come into our 6-year refinance here. That's a new tab that I built or put in that we're going to build onto. And then so what we're going to look for on a 6-year refinance, this is factoring in where are your numbers sitting if you're refinancing 6 years into your mortgage. And then so I've got a 20-year built, and then we're going to do a small interest change. What we're looking at today is where interest rates are so low, there's actually a good chance that you could have a large change on the interest that you owe on your mortgage. So we're going to do a big jump, and then we're going to do kind of what you more typically see in any time that's not right now. But let's go ahead and figure out how much are we going to be refinancing. So 6 years into a year or into a loan is month 72. So I'm going to scroll down here till we find 72. Click over here to highlight bar. Okay, so at 6 years into our loan, 72 months, we've paid $35,000 plus some into our equity. So we're going to want to take that number and remember that. So copy that. Move that up to here. And what we're wanting to see, so that's how much we put into it, the amount that we're going to owe. What we can do is we're going to say equals our loan amount minus what we have into it, essentially what we still owe. So $264,000 plus some. I'm gonna mess up my numbers, just bear with me on that. So we're gonna go ahead and copy that in and move it over into our 6-year loan, and we're gonna change out our loan amount in there. I'm doing value pasting on these instead of just a direct copy and paste. If you do a direct copy and paste, it's going to want to drag the formula with you, which isn't what we're looking for it to do on this one. So what you can do on that is Control V to paste, and then if you push Control again, it'll give you your options on how you want to paste. You just want to do values on that. And then we also want to have something to compare this against to see how much money are we actually putting at risk, how much are we going to be saving, etc. So we're going to do something similar to that to figure out how much interest we're paying. We're going to come back down to month 72. And at this stage, we've paid $68,000 of interest. Whew, that is a lot of interest paid for not a whole lot of principal, but that's how mortgages work. So let's go ahead and copy that value and pull that up to here. I'm just going to paste it right there for now. Once again, do values. So our numbers stay the same. Change that to dollars so it looks right. We're also going to drag or jump all the way down to the bottom. We're going to drag or copy this total amount of interest that we've paid. Bring that back up here. Let's again do our values, and we're going to do the same thing again where we just find what would we have ended up paying if we stayed with this mortgage, which is essentially total amount subtracted from, or what we paid subtracted from the total amount. So this is our what did I call these? Interest to beat value. So if you end up paying more interest than this $147,000, you're losing money on your refinance. So we're going to go ahead and copy that into here as well. We'll put it right here. If you notice that the values disappear when I paste them, that's because it is trying to read the formula still. That's why it's really important to do values instead of a direct copy and paste. Just if you're running into problems, that's where I would start looking. So let's go ahead and call this interest to beat. Okay, let's go ahead and start looking at some comparables now. First of all, so we need to change our interest rate. So our interest rate on this was 4%. With the way things are going right now, depending on your credit score, you could easily see a full percentage drop on your mortgage. So that's going to depend on your personal circumstances. So don't take that as set in stone. But let's say you could pick up a loan for 3% versus the 4%. And as you can see, our monthly payments have dropped by quite a bit, $300 off on that. But let's see how much interest we're going to end up paying on this one. If you know what, I'm going to move this over just a little bit. We're going to say total interest. Okay, and then we're going to come all the way down to the bottom of our interest column. So the total interest that we've paid on this is $137,000. Okay, so that's not bad. I mean, from a really quick down to kind of ground level comparison, you're saving about $10,000 by doing this refinancing. But like I said at the beginning, what we need to remember though is you're not just refinancing this amount though. You're going to have an extra $4,000 tacked on, $5,000 or whatnot. So you want to be careful with this because yeah, $10,000 is cool. That's a good chunk of change, but when you factor into those other costs, you might still end up at best breaking even, saving a couple $1,000s, losing a few $1,000s. Is really going to kind of depend, but so that's good. That was a total percentage 1% drop on interest, so that's good. Let's look at some ways to get better value off of our refinance. So essentially save ourselves money. Money you don't have to spend is good. So on our first thing, let's say we just did the same payment. You've been paying the same payment 4, 6 years, what if you just kept on paying that same payment? What would that do for you? I'm going to come back over here, copy our payment amount. We're actually going to stick it down here. Control V and remember to do your value, and then double click on the small green box in the bottom corner. That way it drags it all the way down. Now what we're going to do, we're going to actually put in a quick little function to make this so we can run through this a little bit quicker. We're going to do equals sum if. What we're looking to do there is we're going to say if a certain criteria is met, it's going to run the sum for us. And I'll show you why that matters here in just a sec. But we're going to say if this value is, and you got to put parentheses in here, otherwise Excel, oops, sorry, it's comma, then parentheses. Excel's not going to quite know what to do with it. So we say if it's less than or equals to 0, what are we summing? We're going to actually sum our interest. You might want to use this total interest, but remember that's running a total of everything that we paid, running off of a month-to-month basis. If you run this as your sum, you're going to end up with a massive, huge number that's not right. So remember to use just a straight interest value on that one. I'm going to go ahead and close the parentheses and press enter. I think I messed something up. Let's see what I did on there real quick. Oh, sorry, that should be greater than equal to. There we go, that looks better. Okay, so the reason why we did that, instead of just running a straight sum function, if we scroll down, the computer will catch up, you'll notice that our outstanding loan amounts turn negative. So since we put in an extra payment, it's not going to take you 30 years to get done. It's going to take you just a little over 20 years on it at this stage. But so what we want to do, we don't want to have to scroll down here every time to see, okay, well, where are we actually at? So by using a sum if function, the way we set that up, it's going to pull this value for us and tack it up to the top. It would actually be closer to this value, but it's a matter of a couple dollars and is generally just a matter of a couple dollars, so it doesn't matter too much in this sense, but that's why we're using the sum if. That way we can change our situation a couple times and see where that puts us. So we're going to go ahead and copy that value and put it under our same payment. Change that to a dollar amount. Okay, so at this point, now we're starting to save some big cash, right? Instead of paying the $147,000, had you continued your loan, in total you're going to be paying a little over $90,000 on this one. That's a pretty substantial amount of savings, even compared to our refinancing on a straight value. So that's one technique that you could do, is keep paying the same payment amount that you would be doing regularly. We're going to now talk about, let me check my titles again, our big payment method. And in all honesty, this is not the most effective method, but it's a good move for you in some cases. The way we structure this one, first of all, we're going to change this back to where it was. We're going to do equals our payment. Remember to do F4 to lock that value in. Click all that down. And then, so on our big payment strategy, what you do is you actually finance the same amount that you did on your initial loan. So we had an initial loan of $300,000. And then, so our payments still drop by a couple $100. So, but what we want to do with this is we actually want to take all that extra equity that we put in. It was about $35,000, 35,000, yep. So we're going to copy that in. So that's cash that you would have had anyway. So when you refinance, if you refinance it out to the original amount, that's cash that you get back in hand. Don't go buy a boat with that. Put that back into your house or another investment property. In this case, we're going to say we're putting it back into our own house. I'm going to copy that in, do a value, Oops, that should be a dollar amount. That's fine. Okay, so at this stage, say that you're not going to have the self-discipline to keep paying on a higher payment amount even when it's required that you pay lower. I don't know if that makes sense. So if you only have to pay $1,000, why would you pay 1,400? If that's going to be something you struggle with, try this approach, and it'll still help you out quite a bit. So our interest value here now is sitting at 110. It's closer to 111, but stick that in there. So you still end up saving yourself quite a bit of money using this strategy. If you can't, if you're not going to have the self-discipline to keep paying a higher amount, take that one payment, stick it in right on that first month's payment on top of whatever you have to pay anyways. And that'll still save you a lot of cash. You end up tacking on some more time on your loan that way. We can look at that here in just a sec. What you do with that is you scroll down to wherever your payment switches over from being, or not your payment, your outstanding amount from positive to negative. And you just keep track of what that month amount is. So you can take it and divide it by 12 if you want to see what that is in years. This ends up taking a little bit longer to pay off than this amount. Sorry, this amount versus this amount. Makes my columns up, my bad. That's another method. Let's say though you use a little bit of a combo of both. So you put the big lump chunk back in, then you're going to pay this same payment amount. You've been paying it for 6 years, might as well keep going, right? Stick that in there, copy that all the way down. At this point, you're going to be paying $91,000 and some change. Well, $247 change. It's a little bit more than just pocket change, let's be honest. But, so if you notice, your combo value and your same payment value pretty close to the same. It's a couple $100 difference, and it actually ends up breaking out to being the same amount of time for both of them. If you use either one of these, it actually accelerates your payments off a little bit quicker than it would be if you continued on your original loan value. So instead of refinancing, you just kept doing the same thing. This is a little bit quicker, and you actually end up saving quite a bit more money. So, really though, if you're going to pick one of the, if this is what you're going to have to do, that's what you do. If you're going to keep on paying the same payment amount, just go ahead and do the same payment on the onset. It's going to end up working about the same, save yourself a couple $100. You do want to, you can run this by your mortgage broker, make sure that all makes sense. And really, if you don't want to sit down and run these numbers, that's fine. The big thing that you want to keep in mind is this interest to beat. That's what you would have paid anyways. When you go back and refinance a loan, your mortgage officer will sit down and say, okay, with this new mortgage on these rates and for this time period, here's the total amount of interest that you will be paying. They're actually required by law to give you that information and give you the total amount of interest that you'll be paying. You can take a quick look at that number, and if you know what this number is in the back of your mind, you can just see how much it's going to cost you. But just know there are ways to work around paying that. On this case, it actually ends up working out pretty well. But yeah, we'll jump into some other situations and kind of see where it's actually not that great of a move. But yeah, so that's how you kind of run a refinancing scenario. There's other ways that you can pay them off as well, and other ways you can refinance. Really though, at the end of the day, if you're going to refinance for the sake of just refinancing to get a lower interest rate, please don't do that. It's not worth it in most cases. Yeah, maybe it's going to save you 10 grand, but remember there's the extra fees and stuff. It's going to end up costing you quite a bit more. That being said, if you just can't keep up with the payments and you need to refinance to a lower payment, you know what, do what you need to. That's fine. Also, if you're refinancing to put into an investment property, that's a whole different story. we're not going to get into that today because that's kind of more specialized. But let's take a quick look at some of our other situations here. So let's say you're 20 years into a mortgage, and you're going to refinance your last 10 years. Essentially, what you're telling the bank is you want to take that 10 years and spread it back out over 30 years. So the interest to beat on that situation would have been the $57,000, and I actually did put these values underneath. That's the amount of months left that you'd have to pay. So the total interest, if you were to go refinance this, that's pretty bad. You might as well just have stayed here, because if you spread back over the 30 years, you're going to be paying, that's almost 50% extra that you wouldn't have had to pay there. But using our techniques, once again, you're almost paying, well, you're paying less than half the amount of interest using some of these other techniques. But depending on where you're at in your mortgage, these values are going to change. So we didn't, this value was a whole lot better on a 6-year interest refinancing, or 6-year refinance on the interest. Whereas in 30 years, that's horrible. Please don't do that. But as we can see, using some of these other techniques, these two, you can actually knock off an extra 6 months. That's a half a year compared to where you would have been. That's pretty cool. Our big payment method, I mean, it's going to take you a little bit longer. That's an extra year, but you still end up saving some cash. And then the other one, our small interest change. This is kind of what you'd see more traditionally. As you can see, this one was run out at 3%. This value should actually not be, well, what we ended up doing on that one is actually ran my numbers out at 3.7%. Okay, sorry. I had a little freak out there where I saw the 4%. It is actually 3%. Our decimal values just got bumped. So we ran this out. So say you'd get a 0.3% interest change. So running our different scenarios, we still have the same interest to beat. And this was running a 6-year loan. So if you're 6 years into your loan, doing your small finance, okay, you're going to end up paying quite a bit more on this one. So remember, in our first situation, interest to beat and the total interest, you actually do pretty well on that one if you can pick up that large of an interest change where it was 1% in total. As a smaller amount, I flipped these values around between the 2 pages, but this is your interest to beat, and this is what you'd actually be paying if you paid this off over 30 years. That's quite a bit more. Once again, though, using our other techniques, you can save yourself quite a bit of money, save yourself quite a bit of time. And then, yeah, I mean, if you want to play around with any other situation, it's easy enough. Just plug the numbers in. Feel free to contact me and ask me how you'd set that up. As I said, though, talk to an accountant, talk to a mortgage broker. You want to double check these numbers always. Please don't take this as set in stone. I don't want you to find yourself in a bad situation because my information didn't quite match up with your situation. But yeah, so like I said, though, put an extra payment in, keep it, and you're not even paying anything extra at that point. It's the same amount that you've been paying all along anyways. If you can keep up with doing that, you save yourself a ton of money. Anyways, I hope that's helpful for you guys to look into, see how that all works out. And then, like I said, feel free to call me up if you're curious on how to run some other situations. And hope everything's going well for everybody. Talk to you later.